Welcome back to another episode of the Epic Investor Podcast. I'm Jason Morris, and I'm here today with Rich Jarvis. Today's kind of a unique podcast. We're going to do a quarterly review. We're going to talk about some of the highs, not so much about the lows, but the objectives that were met, the projects that have been worked on, some status updates with where they've been and how they're coming along. But really just wanting to highlight the opportunities that everyone's involved in and how they are affecting change and impacting lives. So with that, let's get started.
Let's dive into McConnell. I think that's going to be that acquisition was definitely a highlight.
You know, as we went through all of our EOS meetings and all of our level 10 meetings and talked about our rocks and our scorecard items and things we were pushing for, I remember as that got closer and closer, we both had the same mantra, and it's, if this is the only thing that happens this quarter, that's fine. Let's get this thing done. Let's get it to the finish line. And it really just, again, for those that are involved in business acquisition or want to get involved in business acquisition, nothing ever goes the way you think it'll go. Timelines from all of the vendors that say, yeah, we can have that done within a couple of weeks. You just need to budget a couple of months and be prepared for a wild ride.
We have a new template. It's whatever the vendor says, multiply by 3.
Well said. Well said. But at the same time, I really couldn't be happier with the people we have in our corner, all of the vendor relationships and the partnerships that we have. And we can talk a little bit more about how the end, when we got to closing, how it took everyone to be at the ready for the entire day before that got done. So having gone through hundreds of businesses and starting the due diligence with several, and even having some pursuit effort in a deal that we thought we were going to buy in North Carolina, and navigating through all of those, and finally getting to the point where McConnell was the front runner, and where that was going to be the business that had the legs and had the deal to be closed by the end of the quarter. Just I remember pivoting from trying to decide between the North Carolina deal and the Oregon deal, and narrowing in on it. And I do remember at the same time being on the same page with you of, let's just put all of our effort towards that and let's get that deal done. So
yeah, I remember that time. It was almost a mutual epiphany.
I think it was another one of those moments where you were driving in your car and you thought, all right,
window time.
Yes.
Got to call Jason.
Yeah. I can't speak enough, and I mentioned this already, but I can't speak enough about having the right people in the corner and the right people behind you. We had exceptional attorneys. We had exceptional financial relationships. The relationships with getting appraisals and equipment appraisals, and I think that probably, and I'm off the cuff on this comment, but the relationship that we maintained with the seller had to be one of the most crucial pieces that was maintained through the process in order to navigate through all of the ebbs and flows of getting a deal to the finish line. You know, if you had, buying a business is a lot like getting married. And if you had gone up to somebody and said, hey, we're going to get married in 3 months, I promise, I'm going to make it happen. And that goes 9 months, you start to doubt the commitment of the other side, right? And so the reassurances that we had with the sellers, to use their word, the friendship that we had with them.
I looked forward to those weekly touch points. They were the highlight of the week.
It was very astute of their broker. It was his call. He's the one that formed those and organized those. And to have a weekly touch point, a weekly Zoom call with both the buyer and the seller for just 30 minutes. In some cases, it was an hour. Even towards the end there, we called during their vacation to Hawaii, their family time they have in Hawaii for 2 weeks. I thought that was brilliant. I don't feel on our end that it held us any more accountable than we already wanted to be to them. But talking about the relationship, it absolutely broke barriers, and it allowed us to be transparent and open about, now we're pivoting through this. We're going to have to move the closing date again, and now we're working on this point.
I actually think, Jason, if we didn't develop that relationship throughout the due diligence period. When it got tough at the end, I don't think we could have made it through the way we made it through. I think it still would have gotten done. I just don't think we would have been able to make it through the way we made it through with the sellers.
And you all will hear on the other podcast where Rich and I kind of did a debrief in the evening after closing. But having that through the closing process, having that relationship and that mutual respect, it afforded us extra trust from the team that came over with the acquisition, the people who literally were told one day, we're no longer your owner, we're no longer the owners of your company. Welcome to the new era, and these are your two new owners. And to have them transition that trust and the friendship, I think it afforded us a little bit of extra credit, if you will, with each of these people that now are learning to trust us and learning to believe in our vision. So, again, for people that want to go buy a business, you absolutely have to do it. Like, you've got to cut your teeth on a deal. It doesn't matter what size it is, start small, but the whole process, you just can't learn. You can't learn reading it in a book, and you can't learn, watching it on reality TV through Hollywood's lens. You've got to just experience it for yourself, of approaching a problem and finding the people in your corner that are going to rise to the occasion. And you're going to meet some exceptional people that are willing to get into the trench with you and help you solve that problem. And then obviously be there to support you as you continue to go by. But it's funny. I think I remember telling you, Rich, I think we probably have only 3 hurdles left, and they seem really small compared to the hurdles we've already jumped. And you said, don't trip on those little hurdles, right? Because it would be really bad. And anyway, I've got so much excitement around how it worked. Absolutely, like a lot of NFL coaches would say, it doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I think for us, the victory is we maintained excellent relationships with everybody we worked with. There was no burning of any bridge through this process to get it there.
There were so many good people that came to the table. I think going back, just looking at, kicking off this new year and looking at the past quarter and the work leading up to it, I think one of the highlights that I want to make is, we set these goals, these rocks. We have a vision of what we want to accomplish. And the relentless focus on executing on the plan, I think, is also what helps drive to the end. And just kudos to you and the team and all the people we worked with. I think it was phenomenal. One of the things I think we might have mentioned in that debrief, but the amount of time all of the groups spent on a pretty close to the Christmas break to make it through was remarkable. And I don't think they would have just done it if we hadn't developed relationships there either. So
if you consider like walking in to just a regular vendor, let's say you're buying tires for your truck or your car, and you walk in, there's a level of customer service that you expect just because you're bringing service to them. But when you're buying a business or you're buying real estate or you're getting into some investment, it's not just the customer service is important, but it goes way beyond that. There's a level of respect that is maintained and earned and maintained for us to be able to call our attorney in the morning or late at night or send a text approaching the holiday season, and to have not just a response, but action and support and help. And to get that from the bank, from the attorney, from the title company, from escrow.
From all 3 attorneys. We had 3 firms working at the same time on that. 4 total in the project.
Yeah, it was great, and frankly, it was humbling just to feel like you were among people that supported the cause and were there, and it makes me just want to be better. It makes me want to deliver. So
I love that. One of the things I wanted to highlight from the acquisition, since we were there, some of the things that have been done is instituting EOS, getting the leadership team together, unified, and working towards the same goals. And then the initiative that Stephanie has taken with the entire company to build out these 360 models of their process, that they each individual employee, what they do and how it relates to every single other person.
There's a lot of ways to go about doing it. A lot of people call it a playbook, or they'll call it a workflow chart. Hers is probably the best way to describe that is it's probably all of those things times 10 on steroids. Like she's
Yeah.
she's taking the right approach, because the conversations that we've had with this executive team, which in full transparency includes a new hire, Stephanie, who is our chief growth officer, and two existing managers that were in place that have been in the company for 10 years that we've now brought in and created this trio in an executive leadership team. And we've challenged them to, we want you to challenge your norms. We want you to find 1% improvements in every category and every facet of the company, on the warehouse floor, in the processes that you go through for manufacturing, and they're building these products, they're putting them together, they're assembling them, all the way into the R&D lab. It has opened up her expertise and what she's really good at to taking every single thing and just blowing it up under this magnifying glass, and identifying workflows within the workflows. Like it feels like a Whoville that's floating on the snowflake. Like she's getting so granular with it, and that is going to yield incredible returns shortly. So I think that's just a testament to having the right seats on the bus. And again, I got to bring it up. The relationship that we had with the sellers that afforded us the chance to talk to the two existing managers who gave us complete buy-in. Like they came in and said, "We're excited. We love this. We are here. We're not going anywhere. Show us what to do and let's go do it."
We had to do to bring her on. Her then current salary was quite a bit more than we had budgeted in. And one of the things I really liked how it was structured, we showed her the numbers. We were very transparent of this is where the cash flow is right now. This is what we can do. Here's our challenges. These are the roadblocks in the way of paying her what she really deserved to be paid. And the main roadblock was the debt. And a lot of the things that I've been communicating with investors when we've been talking and giving updates was, here we bring on a chief growth officer, and her focus, we couldn't afford her at the front, but she agreed to come on, and we have a base pay bonus tied to paying off the debt. And when we have these, the structure on the payment, we actually made our first distribution. We closed on the 19th, and we've made our first distribution. We're going to go every quarter from here on out, for the most part. And we have what's called a target or a preferred return. And in this case, we're paying out 10% of a preferred return. But the distribution was 7, and it's 7 because of the cash flow recapture requirements that the bank has placed on it. We have to manage that correctly. So in order to do that, we reduced the distribution amount, even though it's still accruing at the 10% for the investors. We're just paying out at a 7. So talking that through with investors and tying it to that bank loan, that everything else is going to pay it off as fast as possible, and then adding the incentive to the C-suite to as soon as that loan is paid off, their permanent bonus of their base salary increases to where they should have been. I think was fantastic and brilliant.
I want to focus on that and probably make it a little bit more tangible for anybody listening. I think that a lot of times we go into deals and we just assume that it has to be this way, right? Like somebody comes in, that's the talent we want. They need $400,000 a year, or they're not coming over, and we immediately turn to how are we going to get $400,000? Like, where's it going to come from? And I think that if you just kind of slow it down and get creative, you bring in like the theory of constraints, and you try to figure out ways to be creative with the resources you do have. I've always loved presenting various options. Here's what we could do. Some of them are going to be crazy and outlandish, fine. But I think the creation that, of the thoughts that you have and the creativity around that is what ultimately arrives at it. And to just go a little bit deeper, Rich, I also remember that we before we hired her, we challenged her to work with us on solving this problem. And she was part of that solution in creating that solution with us, which served two purposes. Let's get your comp figured out, and let's see how well we work together on solving a problem, which, it is yours. And so I think that being creative and not allowing, this wall or ceiling to block you, I think that's really where everything is headed. Like, we're getting out of these cookie cutter deal structures. Everything is now on the table.
Another thing that comes to mind is how the executive compensation for the other two leaders came to be. To kind of set the stage for those who are listening, we meet these leaders for the first time on a Saturday. The rest of the employees find out Monday. It's Tuesday night. It's the last time we're going to be there, really. And one of them says, "Look, I haven't had a performance review in a long time. I want a raise." What do? You already have your budget. It's set, right? And you have to perform for the next 6 months to a year before you can start making decisions. How do you handle that? And I love the outcome. As a shadow, we got through it. But let's talk about that and how we went through that process.
That was fun. And first, I love that, her approach was not difficult. It was not belligerent. It was very professional and very just matter of fact. And I think her line was, "I respect what's gone on here. It's been 3 years. I'm due. I just don't want to get lost in the minutia of all of the transitions. So I'd love to find this out." And she stayed late. She's got a young family. So, I mean, it was exceptional to sit there and have that professional discussion with her. But
it was not an entitlement issue. It was not a demand. It was a transparent approach of saying, this is where I'm at, so you're aware. I don't think she expected anything to change, but she just wanted us to know that that's where she was, and she was needing something.
It was nice just to see, and again, an opportunity to just, let's work together. You're part of the executive team now. What are some solutions here? And obviously, it was like, it was getting late, and I told her we weren't going to have an answer that night because we needed to go back and figure out, what this looked like. We had already shown her as well that the cash flow structure of how everything is utilized. And so she was totally fine with, I get it. You can't do it now. So let's just have it done. And we committed that we'd have it by like Tuesday or something after Christmas. And when you look at, okay, I have $1 million of EBITDA. Let's call it $1 million. And I've got to service the debt, and I got to pay the seller on their seller note, and I've got to cover my investors, and I've got to pay, the new C-suite that's come on board, and I got to have a little bit of cushion, and I've got this management fee that we've got to cover for services that have been rendered. Where could it possibly come from? Well, it can't come from the bank. No, they're not gonna allow us to take away from what's owed to them, nor will we do that with the seller.
I wouldn't recommend making that the first call after it's been funded.
Yeah. You go to your C-suite and ask if we can pay them less. That's not going to happen. You had made the clear selection and the clear decision. It's got to come from us. It's got to come from what we would be paying ourselves.
In the grand scheme of things, especially with this acquisition and all that we're working on, we have a management fee that it isn't sexy. It isn't something that you get wealthy off of. It just keeps the lights on, is really what that's for, to cover all the management pieces. And looking at taking a little bit from that fee, it would make a tremendous difference to them. And overall, the benefit to them far outweighed the pain for us of reducing that fee.
What are the optics around that for your new executive team that is looking to you for that leadership and looking to you to continue to take them into the promised land And now you're taking away from yourself. You know, the book that Lencioni wrote comes to mind, Leaders Eat Last. Like, you know, it's our privilege to serve these people. It's our privilege to work with them and to help elevate the business where it currently is to the next level. That sacrifice is going to be but a small moment, and it's going to pay dividends for them, for us, for everybody involved in the long run. And so, you know, it was a quick and easy decision to make. It was frankly a no-brainer that, yes, that makes sense. Let's go.
Well, what I thought was really cool what you did is, I guess we both were consulting back and forth, but what ended up happening is we ended up taking that same portion and giving it to both of the leaders. I would much rather invest in people and have the loyalty and the drive to give back and do better from them than to withhold from the people and not ever have that.
It would look different, wouldn't it? After we sat there for 2 days and had one-on-ones with all of these people, and if we were to say things like, we're here to support you, we're here to invest in you, we want to grow this thing together, we want you to have input, and the very next decision is, I can't take less so that you have more. That's not how this works. Let's go find a way. Who can we lay off, or who can we restrict hours to, or where can we increase, you know, X, Y, or Z in order to cover your salary, sends a different message when you talk about building culture and when you talk about being authentic and real all of the time. And I remember them saying that to us. You guys continue to be as advertised. It's early, time will tell, but you continue to be as advertised. And so for me, I don't ever want that. I don't ever want that to be in question. So,
well, closing out McConnell, going into some of the epic projects, any last things that come to mind as key milestones that were hit because of this acquisition?
You know, we always have our targets that we want to hit holistically, and this was just one of the many pieces, you know, in the epic vision. For me, I think the first one's always the hardest. I think that the milestone for me is that we've broken the ceiling and we're already teeing up several more, and this serves as a model for future businesses to close on. And boy, have we set the bar pretty high.
Just some highlights, you know, from this last quarter and the year in general in 2025. I just want to call out, you know, when you are in the business of providing opportunities, we hit a metric of the perfect year. And what does that mean? What that means is from January 1 to December 31st, every single week of the year, we had investor contributions. We didn't start out the year saying this is what a goal that we wanted to hit or achieve. There were other, you know, metrics that we were, focused on.
Boy, you had mentioned, I think it was like New Year's Day or something like that. You made a phone call to an investor who ended up pulling the trigger and making an investment. And I just said, the 20-mile march is all about consistent daily effort, regardless of the day, even a holiday. And I in fact, I'm going to call this out too. The email from our seller at McConnell wrote an email to us on the 1st that says, I commend you for working today. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I'm like, well, what else would I do? This is fun.
Yeah, it's Thursday. What are we doing? It's not work.
I'm like, the only time we take a vacation was when everyone else isn't. Right, that's why I prefer it. But I wanted to call that out just for the team, you know, to be able to have that perfect year every single week, having those contributions come in. Some of the things that we were able to do, I know if James was here, he would share his input on the Idaho Youth Ranch. But he had a personal, you know, goal to go out and raise money. He was doing these races, and not only went through, I think, was 6 races that summer, including a full Ironman. Ended up raising just under $4,000 for the Idaho Youth Ranch, and then we all went and took a tour of it. And the facility that's in Idaho, what they've done, it is remarkable. What they can do for those youth, those troubled youth that just need something extra to get their life back on track and headed in the right direction. So what a great opportunity to support them. And
that was such a, James could just speak to this at a different level, but it was really cool. I was just the benefit of being there as the check was presented, and then for the opportunity to tour through the facility. It's really cool to be a part of something at the community level in that way, where there's such a need, and to see this really great program that really has considered almost every single factor of what these kids at all ages they need. It just, man, it makes me want to do more. It makes me want to find a way to throw gas on it and send it to the moon. But what a cool program to be a part of.
we've been doing these portfolio debt funds, and it's been so exciting to see how not only one blessing, lives by having that fixed income, but being able to take portfolios of projects and collateralize the entire portfolio with that collateralization. So instead of having, for example, one specific unit or one home that's used as collateral, imagine using an entire portfolio of all the projects and developments throughout an entire partnership. And in this case, it's currently about 50. I think it's up to 54 million in value, and so we lend up to 30% of that number. But to give access to capital for the sponsors to go and make additional acquisitions, which then become part of that collateral. In times when the capital markets pull back, to enter into the world of private equity or private money. In fact, I think if I could make a prediction going forward, in every market cycle, when it's hot and there's a lot of transactions everywhere, you know what it's like. Banks, they just want to know that you're alive and they'll lend to you. And then the ones that are committing, they'll lend to a straw man. All right. So we've gone through that in 06, 07, right, where it caused those problems. And then it pulls back, and it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction to the market. And then there's no capital to finance anything. And then the projects that are actually good projects going through, all of a sudden don't have access to that capital. So private money comes in, fills that gap, and then the banks and everything come back. And so it kind of just goes back and forth. Well, what's interesting about this cycle is what's sticking is the private money in projects, where it's actually becoming more attractive to stay with them instead of just going back to banks. So banks aren't having the pull that they once have. And I think as the transactions come in, the banks get more aggressive in what they're lending on. That private money is going to hold much stronger than in times past, which I think is really interesting. The other piece is we're having a late season, meaning winter's kind of been pushed back a little bit. This has happened in the past. We had Snowmageddon, and when that happened, it was a later season, and then it just dumped, right? But we're experiencing a later season, and so a lot of projects that were underway that we're thinking we would have to close up have been able to continue to progress, and that's been pretty fun. We've got 33 townhomes we're building in Boise by Micron. We've had our first sell on those. First C of O came on, and we've already sold that unit. That will close in February. And what's really exciting, in Spokane Valley, we have 320 apartments and 116 homes going in. The first phase is 128. It's really wild because the site is, picture if you're in this valley and you have this, I wouldn't say mountain, but this large hill, that has pine trees on it. It's beautiful, right in the middle. All of the dirt that needs to be moved, we're actually moving it from one place and putting it onto another instead of having to bring all of the the stuff in, and that's been hugely helpful. All of these projects are years in the making, and now you're starting to see the effects of all of the years of work leading up to it. One of our other debt funds, it's a portfolio fund. Imagine this, Jason, you're an operator. You operate franchises, whether it's Denny's, Dave's Hot Chicken, Gong Cha, Papa John's, and in this one group, they lead the world in the highest grossing Dave's Hot Chicken by a factor of 3, to kind of put it in perspective. So the second place was literally a third of what they're producing. They're putting in another store, which is now going to become number 2. So they're going to have the first tops, 2 stores. So they put in 7 Dave's Hot Chickens. And this is starting the developments just this year alone. 6 Denny's, 5 Gong Chas, and 2 Kikis. And this is just the start, right? We have this debt fund that's tied to the entire portfolio that's enabling them to make these acquisitions and grow like this.
Boy.
Isn't that wild?
Full send. I love that.
We were able to bring in $27.1 million this year, or in 2025.
In a perfect year, so money raised every single week, 27 million is what was raised.
Yeah, the actual, and then what we capitalized was then quite much greater than that. But
it's exciting, Rich. Like that's we've got a goal for hitting 5,000 lives impacted over the next 5 years. And we want to find ways where we're impacting lives, whether it's financial, whether it's familial, whether it's spiritual, or even physical, where we're helping folks not just obtain their freedom of purpose, but we're also supporting the community in ways. And I think it's also important to note that when we report each week on a life impacted, we also have names and stories to go along with each of those. And to be transparent, I think that this concept is still evolving and it's still growing, which is totally fine and totally normal. But I almost would love to see one day a journal of each of these stories that we've compiled over all of these lives that have been impacted for the benefit of them. It's things like helping people move, or supporting someone in a time of need, or, Rich and his family feeding the homeless on Christmas Day, or no, sorry, not the homeless. It was the veterans services.
It was actually, I actually can say this now. I spent Christmas Day at the sheriff's office. Yes. So on Christmas Day, that morning, in fact, what's wild about this is the acquisition. We didn't get home until late Christmas Eve. It didn't feel like Christmas because we were in travel. We were so busy, right? But Christmas morning, we got up early and headed over to the sheriff's office, set up, and it's the Back the Blue organization. They've been doing this for 8 years, where they provide lunch and dinner for the officers on duty, but allow their families to come in and have a meal with them on Christmas Day. I mean, how cool is that, right?
It's super special.
So that's an example of those lives we impacted that day.
Yeah.
We actually have made, in 2025 plus this first week of January, we're at 650.
Awesome. Oh, I think 800 might be the end of next quarter then, or this quarter.
We moved it to 850.
Yeah.
We increased it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I love that metric. I think for me, that keeps me grounded. It keeps me centered on, what our purpose is in all that we do by, at the end of the day. So that's one of my favorites.
Well, what a great update, Jason.
It's been fun. I mean, again, you kind of get into the fog of war, if you will. You set your targets, you set your objectives, and then you just go to work. To be able to sit back and look back, I think it's important that everybody finds that time to do that. I remember meeting a business owner years ago, and I remember asking him about a picture that he had hung up above his monitor, and it was a picture of a single cab truck it looked like it was like from the 70s. And I was like, tell me about that truck. And he says, my entire business started in that truck. And he says, I really love to just look up and remember where I came from, where I started. And, now he owns 50 trucks and 30 trailers and, acreage, anyway. So it's a blessing to kind of take a moment like this and reminisce and relive even a quarter of, the efforts that have been put in and the work that's been realized, fully acknowledging that none of it's easy and that none of it was perfect. But man, again, relationships, right people, right seats. I feel like you could just take on anything when those are aligned.
Well, fantastic. Fantastic work, Jason. It's been a pleasure to be with you today. For all of you out there, if this has spoke to you, like, subscribe. We appreciate you and your support and look forward to next time.